Hello, welcome to the language learning video series sponsored by American English Pathways. In these videos, we are trying to help both teachers and students navigate that difficult challenge of learning a second language. My name is Teacher Bob, and we believe that one of the best ways to adapt to language learning is to understand how language itself functions. What actually is going on in our brains when we are trying to learn a second language? Now, in this particular video, we are going to focus on the difference between oral language and written language. We kind of have this tendency to sort of join the two of them together. I think they naturally go together, that one naturally follows the other. But nothing could be further from the truth. These are actually two entirely different skill sets. As a matter of fact, when we engage in one or the other, two completely different parts of the brains are being activated. Now, what is the evidence for this? Well, if you think back into how old our species is, we're about 200,000, 300,000 years old, Homo sapiens. Most scientists agree that we have been communicating orally for most of that time. So we've been speaking and listening and communicating that way for hundreds of thousands of years. Writing, however, was only invented about 5,000 years ago. Now, what does this tell us? This tells us that speaking oral language is natural. Our brains are hardwired to communicate this way. Writing, however, was an invention. It's not natural to the brain. Now, what is some other evidence for this? Well, for example, on planet Earth at this time, there's approximately 5,000 languages being spoken, but only about 100 or so actually have a writing system. So for most of the languages being spoken on the planet, you can't even write in that language. There are literally billions of people who can speak a language but cannot read and write in their own language. For example, let's go to the Arctic Circle. Ask an Eskimo how to write the word snow. Eskimo can't write the word snow, even though there are about 50 different ways to say the word snow in Eskimo. But since writing was never invented in the Eskimo language, he can't write it. Now, why is this important? It's important if you think about the way that second language learning was being taught over the last couple of decades, actually over the last couple of centuries. Millions and millions of students have been taught or been attempted to teach them a second language by using that language's grammar. The trouble with this is grammar, official grammar, is a function of writing. Writing is the last language skill to be mastered. As a matter of fact, most of us who are fluent speaking the language, maybe even reading the language, really never even master the skill to write. In other words, it was thought that if you take the most complex skill, right, writing, grammar, that by using a top-down approach, that it would trickle down into the other language skills and we would be able to adapt to all of them. However, but the trouble with this is our brains are not hardwired that way. Our brains are not hardwired for a top-down approach. In fact, it's the opposite. Our brains are hardwired for a bottom-up approach. If you think about how we learn language, we learn in a certain order. When we were very, very young, we were listening, and then we started mimicking the sounds, and so listening leads to speaking. By the time we were 5 years old, most of us are little experts in our native tongue. It's only after we go to school that we learn how to read or write. And if we don't go to school, we never learn how to read or write in that language. Right? So this tells us that probably the worst way that you could try to teach a second language is by using the grammar book. So if you were trying to learn a second language in school and you took 5 years of this language and you were an A student in this language, but after 5 years, you still could not speak and communicate orally in this language, don't feel bad. It wasn't your fault. Your brain was not hardwired to learn language this way. So, we hope this information has been helpful, and by gaining this insight, it will facilitate for you in the future the ability to learn a second language.